Yeah, I actually, always thought I was really healthy. I was always really thin. And so I thought, skinny equals healthy. I had 4 kids. I could still go back into my jeans. I wasn't fat. So why should I worry about what I ate or why should I even exercise? I'm not fat. So I really, had this misconception that skinny equals healthy. And it's so, so false. Um, and so I just one day I was just, well, I remember I was in Palm Desert with my family. We had just moved here from the East Coast and it was Thanksgiving and we weren't used to being by ourselves on Thanksgiving without family, but all the family was coming in at other times other than Thanksgiving or we were going to fly there. So we were kind of by ourselves and I had just had our baby was probably, our youngest, probably like a little, about a year old, I think. And, we decided to go to Palm Springs, the Palm Desert area, because being from the East Coast, that's what you hear about a lot in California. Is this about California? Is this area? So we decided to spend the time over there, and it's during that trip that I started experiencing a pain in my right eye. It actually started with like a twitch, which is something that happens to all of us, especially if we're under stress. Our eyes have
Sure.
a lot of muscles. We don't realize how many muscles the eye has. And so when you're under stress, that's actually a key. That's your body speaking to you. Something's up. Pay attention. I had no clue how to listen to my body at the time, so I ignored it. And little by little, that twitch became a pain in my right eye that grew progressively worse and worse to the point that I couldn't even roll my eye. And try not rolling your eye. It's impossible. You move your eye throughout the day constantly, nonstop, and also when you're sleeping. So I would even wake up from this pain in my eye from moving my eye. And so I started, there were some tests being done on me and they were trying to figure out what was going on. And within that time, the vision loss began. And at first it was like if somebody took an eraser and erased like a squiggly line in the center of my eye. And then a few days later, it's from that line down, a vision loss. And then one day I'll never forget, I was cutting apples in the kitchen for my kids who, it's just a perfect picture because I would make sure they ate well, but I wouldn't.
Mm.
So I was cutting apples for them in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I realized something drastic happened with my eye, and I was just so scared. I immediately thought, oh no, it's my left eye. Now this is happening with my left eye. So I covered up my right eye to look out of my left eye, and I could see fine. And then when I covered up my left eye, I realized that I was blind in my right
Oh my
eye, where before
goodness.
I just had partial vision loss. Now my vision was gone. And so,
Wait, let's stop for a second.
yes,
So you go from being somebody who is skinny, you called yourself skinny, you never
yep.
had an issue with your weight,
hmm
um, but you didn't necessarily eat healthy. When you say that, can you tell us a little bit about what that diet looked like?
It was basically, just kind of grabbing whatever I could, what sometimes maybe it was kind of healthy and most of the time it just wasn't. And again, because I didn't have a weight issue, I just thought, well, I'm really lucky because I can eat whatever I want.
Well, like
And
what would be a typical day's worth of meals? Like what would you have for breakfast?
so, like in the morning, I'd have like a piece of toast with jelly, coffee, and or maybe like a cereal, or I just like grab whatever my kids did. I was known for that, like just grabbing whatever my kids left over and just running out the door.
Like so many
Um,
moms.
yeah, tons, exactly. I was that typical mom that took care of everyone but myself, and that was something I had to learn too. That in order to be a good mom and a great wife and take care of my family, I need to take care of myself, and it's good for my family and it's a great example to my children.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I would eat a lot of bread, a lot of sugar. I loved sugar. And so, when I would have, because I wasn't exercising, I wasn't eating healthy, I'd have that like around 3 or 4 o'clock crash that a lot of us moms get right when your kids are coming home and you have to rush off to soccer and dance practice and all this. And it was just overwhelming. So I would just down sweet, sugary coffee. Like a lot of people, their comfort food is, I don't know, macaroni and cheese or, like, I don't know, a sweet roll or, people have their different comfort foods. For me, being Colombian and growing up in a culture where coffee is everything,
Mm.
and I grew up being given coffee as a young girl, like, like shots of coffee with like a lot of milk, really, really sweet. It's called café con leche, and it's very common with bread and a baguette. I mean, sorry, with an egg and a baguette. That was my breakfast before school. And so I had this, it was to me like my comfort food was like a sweet, really sugary drink
Mm.
and a warm drink. And So I did a
So a
lot of
lot of
sugar,
sugar and a lot of
a lot
bread,
of
which is
bread.
essentially sugar too.
Exactly, like, exactly, sandwiches and then, my husband's Italian, so, then there's like the pastas and all, so that was it. I hated vegetables and very little fruit, and so I would just not even really do vegetables. Maybe like I make my kids eat them because I knew that they were supposed to be good for you, but I really had no knowledge of food or how food can play out in your body at every level, emotionally, physically,
Right.
mentally, at every level,
Right.
how
So
much it
so
affects.
all this happened
Yes.
and kind of just year after year nothing, no other symptoms, but then all of a sudden this blindness happens in your eyes. So then what?
So then, when I went blind in my eye, they rushed me for an MRI, and that MRI, the next day I was read the results, and the neurologist sat me down. Now I'm by myself because my kids are at school, and well, the baby was home, and my husband stayed home with him because I really just thought I had like some kind of an eye infection. I wear contacts. I was due for a checkup, my annual checkup, and so I just didn't think much of it really. And when I was given those results, I was by myself, and my doctor said, "You have had an extreme case of optic neuritis, which is inflammation of the optic nerve. Usually, people have blurry vision or partial vision loss, like you had at first, but now your vision is gone, and it's gone forever. You will never get your vision back."
Whoa.
And then he pulls up this MRI on the screen, on this large computer screen he had, and I just see my brain with all these white dots all over it. And he said, "These are lesions, and you have 10 of them, and they're all over your brain, all different sizes. And lesions, in conjunction with the optic neuritis, is multiple sclerosis.
Wait,
And
wait,
multiple,
wait, hold on a second.
yes,
Lesions. Can
yes.
you describe what, I mean, what does that mean? I think I understand what it means. I think most people would understand. That's like basically an open sore, right?
On your brain, exactly. So what
On your
happens with
brain.
MS is it's an autoimmune disease where your body's attacking itself, and so it attacks the myelin sheath, which is the protective covering around the nerves in your brain. And so that once it attacks that and that's gone, a lesion is formed, and depending on where that lesion is where your symptoms are. And I had a lesion on my optic nerve, and it actually is just it's inflammation in your body, which all disease is.
So it
Um,
basically manifested itself into these, all of the stress on your body over the years manifested itself into these lesions, which affected your optic nerve. What else did it affect,
well,
specifically because of the position on your brain?
Well, I don't know exactly. I mean, I'm sure mood and, who knows like where exactly the other ones were that would affect it. I'm sure because a lot of people with MS are depressed or they have problems problem
Interesting.
solving or different things or it affects their walking and their bowel control movements. I mean, it's the ramen of things. You like with MS, you never know what you're going to get every day you wake up. You could just have something different throughout the day, or you don't know, and you don't know how long it's going to last. If it's permanent and if you'll get it back, it's a scary, very unpredictable disease, and so I'm not really sure how those other ones were affecting me in detail, but I know that the biggest symptom at that point, because the lesions was actually really big on that optic nerve, was the blindness.
Did
And
you
I
have any
prevent
other symptoms? Like, was there anything else that you were feeling? Did you feel a little depressed or?
I absolutely did. I actually had a lot of like depression that would just come on suddenly, and I really thought it was just because of I had so many kids, and I thought, I nursed so long. I nursed all my babies like a year and a half, and I had a lot of babies close together, and so and I thought maybe it's just my hormones, and a lot of times I would just kind of be like, oh, I'm Latin, I'm Latina, it's just how we are, and I would just
Right.
kind of excuse it. But looking back, I always tell my husband it was a blessing in disguise because I'm sure that down the road, now and I'm going to be 42, that I would have been on some kind of medication for depression because I was depressed, that my moods were just up and down, up and down. And so I know that all has to do with diet and lifestyle as well. And all these things, I believe, the lack of the lifestyle changes of fitness and diet and all these things and stress management all manifested in my body with MS symptoms, lesions on my brain. With someone else, it might be cancer or some other
Sure.
diagnosis, but it always ends in something.
Okay,
So
so
as
you're sitting there.
Mhm.
I mean, your mind is blown right now. You're sitting there, and I'm sorry you had to get the news when you were by yourself, but you're sitting there and you've just heard I am going to be blind in one eye, and now I have multiple sclerosis. It's really even hard to say. And by
Yeah.
the way, my beautiful aunt passed away from MS, and
No, I'm
it
so
was one of
sorry.
those things where all of the things, and I can't wait to share what you've done, but all of the things that you've done to do better for yourself, it just really sucked her down. The depression, and that led to alcoholism, that led to just being sedentary and not caring anymore. So it can go very much two ways with a diagnosis like that. But you get the diagnosis of MS, and you're like, okay, now what? And, I want you to fast forward a little bit because you shared with me you went to a lot of different doctors and they told you a lot of different things. I mean, can you kind of just encapsulate what they told you and then what you did about it?
Yes, so let me back up a little bit because one of the things that he also said to my diagnosis that was, besides it's progressive and there's no cure and you'll be on medication your whole life and you'll never get your vision back and these lesions will just, you have 10 now, but in 6 months you could have another five or the little ones could become big and all these things. He pointed out that on my brainstem there was lesions, which he said would put me in a wheelchair within the next 5 years. So if I lived in a two-storied home, I should start making arrangements to move to a one-storied home because
Wow.
this would be my reality. So it was just incredibly shocking to me, and very scary. Obviously, being a mom to at the time my kids were under 7, all four of them under 7. So yes, so I
And how
began.
old were you at the
I
time?
was 35 years old. I began researching all the medications he was told me to research. There was all different kinds that you inject in your leg, and some of them you would go to a doctor for, and there was all these different ones, and I was very uncomfortable with that, with the medications, because I was always really sensitive to medication, and every time I read these crazy side effects on these MS drugs,